The man fell from the second floor, right into the middle of the saloon floor. The piano music abruptly stopped. No one had time to understand what had just happened. 1 second ago, the Dusty Star Saloon was still submerged in a silence, as taut as a bowstring, after Ethan Cole placed the name Cornelius Vale on the bar. 1 second later, a body was lying motionless on the wooden floor, right beneath the violently shaking oil chandelier. Blood spread slowly through the old floorboard crevices. A playing card fell from that man's hand. The ace of spades. Ethan Cole stood perfectly still by the bar, his hand just one breath away from his gun butt. Clara Hayes stood a few steps away from him, her face pale, but her eyes remaining alert. The saloon owner, Miles Avery, trembled so much that the glass cleaning cloth fell from his hand. No one looked at the dead man longer than Ethan did, because he knew, in Red Hollow, a corpse was never just a corpse. They were messages, they were warnings, and sometimes they were invitations. A drunken man in the corner of the room stammered, He fell from up there." No one replied. Ethan slowly looked up at the second floor. The wooden railing above was empty. A room door was left ajar. In the darkness behind the door, something had just moved, very fast, very softly, like a breathing shadow. Ethan said in a low voice, "Clara." Clara did not turn her head. "What?" "Get everyone behind the counter." Miles swallowed hard. "Ethan, that is room number 6. No one has rented that room since last week." Ethan kept looking up at the second floor. "Someone rented it tonight." Clara immediately grabbed a young waitress's hand, pulling her back behind the counter. "Get down, low. Everyone, get down low." A few people hurriedly ducked down, but there was still a foolish cowboy who stood up, his eyes staring blankly at the dead body on the floor. "Who is he?" Ethan did not look at him. "Sit down." The guy panicked. "But, sit down, right now." Too late. A bullet shattered the whiskey bottle right behind the cowboy's head. Liquor and glass splattered all over the wall. The guy screamed, tumbling down onto the floor. The entire saloon burst into screams. Ethan drew his gun, not just fast, but so fast that the people in the room only saw his coat slightly twitch. One of Ethan's bullets shattered the hanging lamp on the second-floor hallway. Darkness swallowed the entire railing area. The second bullet embedded into the wooden pillar next to the door of room number 6. There was no sound of anyone falling. There was no groaning. The person up there had dodged before Ethan fired. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Not an amateur." Clara called out from behind the counter. "How many of them?" "One on the upper floor." Ethan looked toward the main door. "Could be more down on the street." As if to answer him, the sound of horse hooves stopping echoed outside the saloon. Not just one horse, but an entire group. Miles whispered, "Good Lord." Ethan took a step back from the bar, his eyes still fixed on the second floor. "The back door?" Miles replied quickly. "Yes, through the kitchen. But if they know you are here, someone is definitely blocking it already." Clara looked at the dead body on the floor. "Ethan? Do you know him?" Clara did not answer immediately. Her silence spoke more than any words could. Ethan turned to her. "Clara." She took a breath, her voice lowering. "His name is Daniel Price." Miles turned pale. "Daniel Price? The mailman?" Clara nodded. "He was not just a mailman." Ethan asked, "What did he bring?" Clara looked at the ace of spades lying next to the dead man's hand. "Something worth the Black Viper killing him for right in the middle of the saloon." Outside, a man's voice rang out from the main street. "Ethan Cole!" The entire saloon fell dead silent. That voice was not Silas Boone's. It was younger, sharper, carrying the confidence of someone who had never been refused by anyone. "Step outside. No one else has to die." Ethan looked at Miles. "Who?" Miles swallowed hard. "Caleb Rusk," Clara continued. "Silas Boone's new right-hand man. He is not the fastest, but he likes burning houses with people inside. Ethan exhaled slowly. Good. A man with clear hobbies. Out on the street, Caleb Rusk laughed loudly. Cole, I know you hear me. We do not need to barge in. This saloon is made of dry wood, and we have enough lamp oil for the whole town. A woman behind the counter burst into tears. Miles whispered, They will really do it. Ethan looked around. There were 8 civilians in the saloon. Miles, Clara, 2 waitresses, 1 piano player, the cowboy who almost died just now, an old miner, and a man wearing a gray coat who had been sitting motionless in the corner since the beginning. Ethan looked at the man in the gray coat a little longer. That person lowered his hat. Too calm. In a room full of fearful people, the calmest one is usually the most dangerous one. Ethan said to Miles, Put out all the lamps. Miles looked at him as if not understanding. What? Put out the lamps. Right now. Miles hastily grabbed a wooden stick, smashing it into the 2 lamps near the counter. Clara understood immediately. She pulled another wet cloth to cover the lamps. The dusty star sank into dim darkness, with only the moonlight falling through the windows and the floorboard crevices. Outside, Caleb Rusk lost his patience. Cole, I am counting to 10. Ethan knelt beside Daniel Price's corpse. He gently flipped the dead man's hand. In the palm of Daniel's hand, there was a blue ink stain. Not blood. Ink. Ethan looked at the ace of spades. The back of the playing card had a tiny fold mark. He picked it up. Clara approached closer, whispering, Do not stand in the middle of the floor. Ethan unfolded the card. Inside there was a thin piece of paper hidden with wax glue. On the paper there were only 3 lines of text. The sheriff is paid. The mine is not empty. Vale owns the badge. Ethan finished reading, his eyes turning cold. Clara asked softly, What is written on there? Ethan handed the piece of paper to her. Clara read it. Her face changed. Not fear, but a confirmation of what she had suspected for a long time. Miles said with a trembling voice, Sheriff Briggs, Ethan said, is bought. Miles took a step back. No, impossible. Walter Briggs has been the sheriff of Red Hollow for 12 years. Clara looked at him. And the Black Viper has controlled the town for nearly 3 years. Do you think they could do that without the sheriff knowing anything? Miles could not answer. Out on the street, Caleb started counting. 1, 2. Ethan folded the piece of paper and put it in his pocket. Clara, do you know the way up to room number 6? There is a back staircase. Lead me. Miles panicked. Are you planning to go up there? The one who shot Daniel is still upstairs. Ethan looked up at the darkness on the 2nd floor. Correct. Then why are you still going up? Ethan replied. Because he shot Daniel from behind. But he did not take the card. Clara realized. Which means he did not know Daniel hid the information there. Ethan nodded. And if he did not know, perhaps he is looking for something else. Out on the street. 3. Clara grabbed the small derringer. Ethan looked at her. You only have 2 bullets. Clara stuffed more bullets into her sleeve. Then I will not miss. Ethan looked at Miles. Keep everyone down low. When I give the signal, get them through the back door. Miles asked, What kind of signal? Ethan looked at the intact liquor bottle on the counter. When you see fire. Miles froze. Fire. Ethan had already stepped toward the back stairs. Trust me, this time, fire is on our side. 5. The back staircase was dark and narrow. The smell of dust, rotting wood, and old gunpowder clinging thick in the air. Clara walked ahead, her footsteps making no sound. Ethan followed, gun in his right hand, left hand lightly touching the wall to feel for vibrations. The floor above was silent. Too silent. Ethan whispered, Where did you learn to shoot? Clara did not turn around. In a place where drunk men thought women would not dare pull the trigger. Good answer. And you? Ash Creek. Clara fell silent for a beat. Is the story there true to what people say? Ethan looked at the dark door at the end of the hallway. No. Which part is not true? All of it. Clara turned back to look at him. But before she could say more, a very faint noise sounded behind the wall on the left. Ethan immediately pulled Clara down. A bullet flew right past where Clara's head had just been, embedding into the door frame behind. Ethan fired 2 shots back through the partition. A choked groan rang out. Then silence. Clara breathed heavily. Did you know he was there? No. Then why did you pull me down? Because the floorboards stopped creaking. Clara looked at him with confusion. Ethan said briefly, a person standing still is usually preparing to shoot. Outside the saloon, Caleb Rusk yelled loudly, 8! Ethan strongly kicked the door on the left. Inside was a small room, the curtains fluttering in the wind. A gunman dressed in black leaned against the wall, his gun dropped by his hand. It was not the one in room number 6, just a guard. Clara looked at the open window. He came in from the awning. Ethan picked up the guy's gun, checking it quickly. The Black Viper is using more men than before, Clara replied. No, they are using men more openly than before. Ethan looked at her. What is the difference? Before, they were still afraid of the town resisting. Now, they are not. Out on the street. 9. Ethan stepped out into the hallway. Room number 6 was right at the end of the hall. The door was ajar. The darkness inside was as thick as ink. Ethan signaled for Clara to stand behind. Then he threw the gun he had just picked up into the room. Immediately, 2 shots were fired out from inside the room. Ethan dashed low through the doorframe. Clara fired a bullet into the corner of the room, where the muzzle flash had just sparked. A shadowy figure rolled through the window, jumping out onto the outer awning. Ethan ran to the window. He did not escape down to the street. He ran up onto the roof. Clara rushed into the room. Room number 6 was ransacked. The mattress was slashed. The floorboards were pried open. The walls had their old wallpaper torn off. Daniel Price clearly had hidden something here. Clara looked around. What are they looking for? Ethan inspected the table by the window. On the tabletop was a square-shaped dust outline. A box had once sat there, but now it was gone. Ethan said, They have found it. Clara stiffened. So, Daniel died for nothing? Ethan looked down at the floor. There was a small streak of mud, but unlike the mud on the street, it was darker, having a metallic smell. He bent down, touching it with his hand. No. Clara asked, What is it? Mine, dirt. Red Hollow has 3 mines around the area. This kind is not from those 3 mines. Ethan stood up. The mine is not empty. Clara recalled the line of text on the paper. The mine is not empty. She whispered, You mean? Ethan said, Daniel did not just find out the sheriff was bought. He found out where the Black Viper hid something. Outside, Caleb Rusk screamed, 10! Right after that, fire blazed up at the main door. Clara quickly turned around. They are really burning it! Ethan looked through the window. Down on the street, Caleb Rusk and 8 gunmen stood in front of the saloon. 2 other guys held torches. One guy was blocking the back door. Ethan said, They want to force me out the main door. Clara asked, Do you plan to go out? Ethan looked at the opposite roof, where the assassin had just run. No. He pulled the window curtain down, wrapping it around his hand. I am going up. Clara looked at him as if wanting to say he was crazy. Up to the roof? Yeah. There are at least 8 of them down on the street. That is exactly why they will not expect me right above their heads. Clara tightened her grip on the derringer. I am coming with you. No. Clara looked straight at him. You need someone who knows this saloon. I am coming with you. Ethan did not have time to argue. He nodded. Stick close. Ethan and Clara climbed through the window of room number 6, setting foot onto the narrow outer awning of the 2nd floor. Below, smoke began creeping into the saloon. Miles was dragging the civilians toward the kitchen. The back door guard raised his gun. not letting anyone escape. Ethan looked at Clara. Does the back door have water barrels? Yes. Is there hard liquor? Clara looked at him. This is a saloon. Ethan smirked. Right. He took a matchbox from his pocket, handing it to her. When I shoot the back door guard, you throw the liquor bottle into the oil puddle in front of the main door. Clara understood immediately. You want to create a firewall? No. I want to create a loud enough explosion for everyone to run. Clara looked down below. And if I miss the throw? Then we die a bit hotter. Clara glared at him. You sure know how to comfort a woman. Ethan looked at her. I am not good at talking. Clearly. The back door guard stood in the shadows, a rifle in his hands. He did not look up. He only stared intently at the kitchen door. Ethan lay low at the edge of the awning. The wind pushed stinging smoke into his eyes. He waited. 1 second. 2 dangs. The guard turned his head, spitting onto the ground. Ethan fired. The bullet struck the rifle, sending it flying out of the guard's hands. He screamed, clutching his wrist. Run! Ethan shouted. Below, Miles kicked the kitchen door wide open. The civilians poured out. Clara lit the rag wrapped around the liquor bottle's neck. She threw it hard down in front of the main door. The fire met the liquor and oil, rising up into a blindingly bright curtain between the saloon and the gang of gunmen. Horses neighed in panic. Caleb Rusk backed away, shielding his face. Shoot! Shoot at the back door! But the back door was already empty. Miles and the civilians inside the saloon ran into the small alleyway. Ethan turned to Clara. Now, for the roof. Clara pointed toward the opposite roof. The assassin ran in that direction. They dashed up onto the roof, moving along the old wooden planks connecting the Dusty Star to the tailor shop next door. The assassin was up ahead, his black figure standing out against the pale moonlight. He held a small box under his armpit. Ethan raised his gun, but he did not shoot. At this distance, if Ethan shot the box, they could lose the only thing Daniel Price traded his life to keep. Ethan lowered his gun. Stop! The assassin turned his head. His face was covered by a black bandana. Cold eyes. He jumped across the gap between the two roofs. Clara stopped abruptly. That distance is too far. Ethan did not stop. He ran faster. Clara shouted, Ethan! Ethan flew across the gap, his shoulder slamming onto the opposite roof, rolled once, then immediately stood up. The assassin turned back to shoot. Ethan dove behind the chimney. Broken brick shards flew into his shoulder. Clara, from the other roof, fired the last Derringer bullet. The bullet did not hit him, but shattered a piece of the roof right beneath the assassin's feet. He slipped a beat, enough for Ethan to charge at him. The two crashed into each other. The box flew out, sliding down the edge of the roof. Ethan grabbed the assassin's clothes. That guy pulled a knife. The blade flashed under the moonlight. Ethan blocked his wrist, delivering a punch to his ribs. The assassin did not cry out. Not at all. He drove his knee into Ethan's stomach, then twisted his body, aiming to stab the knife into his neck. Ethan tilted his head to dodge, but the blade slashed through the collar of his coat. Both rolled near the edge of the roof. Below was the main street full of fire, smoke, and guns. Caleb Rusk looked up and saw them. He is on the roof! Shoot him down! Ethan and the assassin had to separate to avoid the hail of bullets. The small box slid a little further. Half of it was already off the roof edge. Clara shouted from the other roof, Ethan, the box! Ethan crawled toward it. The assassin also lunged forward. Both touched the box at the same time. Ethan looked straight into his eyes. Daniel died for this thing? The assassin spoke for the first time, his voice hoarse and cold. Daniel died because he forgot who Red Hollow belongs to. Ethan strongly squeezed his wrist. No one owns a town. The assassin laughed very softly. Vale does. He let go of the box. Ethan was startled. The assassin pulled a small flare from his sleeve, smashing it hard against the roof. Within the smoke screen, he rolled off the roof edge, landed on the second-floor balcony of the adjacent hotel, then disappeared into the darkness. Ethan managed to keep the box, but down on the street, Caleb had seen it. "He got the box! Block all exits!" Clara shouted. "Ethan, come down this way!" Ethan shoved the box into his coat, running toward Clara. Below, the Black Viper began surrounding the entire block. The dusty Star Saloon was partially burned at the front door, but had not collapsed yet. The civilians had escaped, but the fire made the main street bright as day. There were no more shadows to hide in. Only smoke remained. Ethan jumped back to the dusty Star's roof. Clara pulled him over. "You are injured." Ethan looked at the tear in his coat. "The coat is injured. There is blood on your hand." "It is not my blood." Clara did not believe it, but did not argue. They climbed down from the back of the saloon, where Miles was waiting in the alley with the people who had just escaped death. Miles asked as soon as he saw Ethan, "What the hell were you doing on the roof?" Ethan presented the box. "Looking for this." Miles looked at it like looking at a live snake. "Is that Daniel's box?" Clara asked. "Do you know it?" Miles stayed silent. Ethan placed the box onto a wooden barrel in the alley. The box was made of ebony wood, as small as a hand, locked with a brass lock. A letter V was engraved on the lid of the box. Not a regular letter V, but a letter V wrapped around by a black snake. Clara whispered, "Vale." Miles looked around, afraid someone might hear. "Do not open it here." Ethan asked, "Why?" Miles lowered his voice. "Because if Daniel died to bring it here, then the person who opens it will also be hunted like him." Ethan looked at him. "You know more than what you say, Miles." Miles pursed his lips. Clara stared intently at him. "You know Daniel Price was not just a mailman, right?" Miles turned his face away. Ethan placed his hand on the box. "You have 10 seconds to decide whose side you are on." Miles snapped back. "Do you think it is that easy? You disappeared for 7 years, Ethan. You do not know how this town has lived. People are not silent because of cowardice. People are silent because the next morning they still have to feed their children." Ethan did not say anything. Miles gasped for breath, his eyes reddening. The Black Viper does not just shoot people. They take the water, take the land, take the medicine, take even the coffins if needed. The sheriff looks the other way. The court in Santa Mira never receives any lawsuits, because the ones carrying the papers never reach their destination. Clara said softly, "Miles." Miles looked at Ethan. Daniel Price was one of the few people who still dared to send news to the outside. He sent letters to the governor, to the judges, to anyone who might listen. But last week he discovered something. Ethan asked, "What thing?" Miles looked at the box. "The Mercy Ridge mine is not depleted of silver, as Vale claimed. It is still full, but Vale closed the mine, drove away the workers, then used the Black Viper to turn that place into a storage." Clara asked, "A storage for what?" Miles shook his head. "I do not know." Ethan replied, "Daniel knows." He took a small knife from his belt, prying open the box's lock. Miles hastily tried to stop him. "Do not." Too late. There was no gold inside. There was no money. There was only an iron key, a small folded map, and a bent sheriff's badge. Miles closed his eyes. Clara picked up the badge. On the metal surface there were scratches and a black mark like a burn. She whispered, "Walter Briggs's badge." Ethan opened the map. A red ink line marked the path from Red Hollow to the Mercy Ridge mine. At the end of the map there was a symbol shaped like a tunnel entrance. Next to it was the text, "North Shaft, under the old chapel stone." Clara read it slowly. "The North Tunnel, under the old chapel's stone slab." Ethan looked at the key. "Looks like tomorrow we are going to the mine." Miles shook his head violently. "No, no one goes to Mercy Ridge and comes back. That mine is cursed." Ethan looked at him. "No, it is guarded." Footsteps echoed from the beginning of the alley. Everyone turned around. A small, skinny boy appeared in the darkness. Tommy Reed. His face was smeared with dust. his eyes wide open. "Mr. Cole," Ethan stepped forward. "Did I not tell you to stay at Boot Hill?" "I did stay, but then I saw fire in the town." Clara frowned. "Who is this child?" Ethan replied, "The only person in Red Hollow smart enough not to listen to me." Tommy breathed heavily. "I saw the sheriff." The entire alley fell silent. Ethan asked, "Briggs?" Tommy nodded. "He was not at the office. He met someone at the North Stable." Clara asked, "Who?" Tommy swallowed hard. "A person wearing a black coat, holding a long rifle." Ethan and Clara looked at each other. "The sniper." Tommy continued, "I heard him say, if Ethan Cole manages to open the box, then burning even the entire Dusty Star would not be enough." Miles took a step back. Ethan asked, "What else?" Tommy looked at the box on the wooden barrel. "The sheriff said, before dawn, Clara Hayes must be brought to meet Vale." Clara stiffened. Miles whipped around to her. "Clara?" Ethan looked at her. "Why does Vale want you?" Clara remained silent. Outside the alley, gunshots suddenly rang out from the direction of the main street. Caleb Rusk was searching every house. A voice screamed out, "Find Cole, find the singing woman at the Dusty Star, and find the box." Ethan reloaded his Colt. "We are out of time." Clara looked at him. "There is a tunnel under the saloon." Miles was dumbfounded. "Clara." Ethan turned to her. "A tunnel?" Clara spoke quickly. "During the Prohibition era in this region, the previous owner of the Dusty Star dug a tunnel leading out to the abandoned stable behind the church. I discovered it 2 years ago." Miles looked at her. "You knew, but did not say anything?" Clara replied, "If I had spoken of it, it would no longer have been an escape route." Ethan nodded. "Lead the way." The group quickly moved through the back door of the saloon, where smoke was still rising, but the fire had been contained to the main door area. Clara pulled back the rug behind the counter, revealing a wooden trapdoor. Miles looked down into the darkness. "I hate this place," Ethan said. "You can stay here with the Black Viper." Miles immediately replied, "I love this place." Clara opened the trapdoor. A cold draft of air blew up from beneath the ground, carrying a musty smell. Tommy swallowed hard. "Are there snakes down there?" Ethan looked at the silver snake mark in his hand. "There are enough up here." They went down into the tunnel one by one. Ethan went last. Right before closing the trapdoor, he heard the main door of the saloon being kicked wide open. Caleb Rusk screamed, "Search everything! Cole cannot just disappear!" Ethan slowly closed the trapdoor. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel was low and narrow, only enough for one person at a time to pass through with their head bowed down. Miles held the oil lamp. Clara walked in front. Tommy walked in the middle, his hand gripping Ethan's coat tightly. Ethan walked while listening, not just listening ahead, but listening behind. After a few minutes, Tommy whispered, "Mr. Cole, what is it?" "Someone is following us." Miles abruptly stopped. Clara turned her head. No one heard anything. Ethan raised his hand, signaling everyone to be quiet. Ethan turned off the oil lamp in Miles's hand. Total darkness. Clara whispered, "What are you doing?" Ethan answered softly, "Letting him think we cannot see anything, just like him." From the back of the tunnel, a faint light appeared, a small lantern, then the sound of footsteps. One person. No, 2 people. Ethan pressed himself tightly against the dirt wall. He took the bent sheriff's badge out of the box, throwing it toward the front of the tunnel. The 2 silhouettes behind immediately fired in the direction of the sound. Ethan dashed forward in the darkness. A strike with the gun butt. One guy fell down. Clara lit the lamp again right at the moment the second guy raised his gun at Ethan. But Tommy quickly threw a handful of dirt into his face. The guy cursed, losing his vision. Ethan punched him, making him mull against the dirt wall. Miles stared at Tommy with his mouth wide open. "What did you just do, kid?" Tommy trembled but tried to speak. "I do not have a gun." Ethan looked at him. "But you have brains." Tommy tried to hide a smile, even though his face was still pale with fear. Ethan bent down to pull the face cover off one of their pursuers. Not a regular black viper. There was no silver snake pin on his collar. Instead, there was a brass button engraved with the letters VRC. Clara saw it, her facial expression completely changing. Ethan asked, "What is VRC?" Clara did not answer. Ethan looked at her a little longer. "Clara," she exhaled. "Vale Rail Company." Miles was shocked. "Men from the railroad company?" Clara nodded. "Not just the bandit gang. Vale is also using his private men." Ethan looked at the knocked-out guy. "So, the Black Viper is just the dirty hands," Clara said. "And Vale is the one paying for those hands." The tunnel led them to the abandoned stable behind the church. As Clara pushed the rotten wooden door open, the night air flooded in. Red Hollow in the distance was still in chaos. The firelight from the dusty star dyed the sky a dark orange color. Ethan looked toward the sheriff's office. One window panel was lit up. Then the silhouette of a person passed by. Walter Briggs, the sheriff of the town, the person who should have protected the civilians, now stood in the office amidst the wanted posters like a guard dog for someone else. Clara stood next to Ethan. "Are you planning to confront him right now?" Ethan looked at the key in his hand. "No." Miles breathed a sigh of relief. "Finally, you know how to think." Ethan continued. "First, I need to know what he is hiding in the jail." Miles immediately turned pale again. "I take back what I just said." Tommy pointed toward the back of the church. "There is a detour leading to the sheriff's office. I know it." Ethan looked at the boy. "Of course you do." Tommy shrugged. "I do not have a home, but I have many places to hide." Clara looked at Ethan. "And me?" Ethan replied, "You and Miles take everyone to the church basement." "No." "Clara, Vale wants to capture me. The sheriff mentioned my name. Daniel died in my saloon. Do you think I will go hide while you step into the snake pit?" Ethan looked at her for a moment, then handed her the gun taken from their pursuer in the tunnel. "Know how to use it?" Clara checked the cylinder. "I sing worse than I shoot," Miles muttered. "You sing well," Clara replied. "Then you know how well I shoot." They went around behind the rows of houses, avoiding the light from the main street. Red Hollow at night was not quiet. It breathed with the sounds of hastily locked doors, people whispering behind curtains, patrolling horse hooves, and occasional gunshots ringing out as if to remind everyone that the law was sound asleep. Tommy led them through a small alley behind the blacksmith shop. From there, they could look straight across to the sheriff's office. A guard stood in front of the door, not a deputy sheriff. A black viper. Ethan looked at Clara. "Do not kill unless necessary." Clara nodded. Ethan picked up a rock, throwing it onto the tin roof on the left. The guard turned his head. Clara stepped out from the darkness. "Excuse me, did you see a little boy run past here?" The guard narrowed his eyes at her. "You are Clara Hayes?" Clara smiled. "Depends on who is asking." The guy put his hand on his gun. "Caleb is looking for you." "Then maybe I should meet him." The guard stepped forward. "Right, you should." Ethan appeared from behind, striking a blow to his nape with the gun butt. Clara looked at Ethan. "I could have handled it." Ethan replied. "I know. Then why did you strike him?" "Saving bullets." Tommy laughed silently. Ethan opened the door to the sheriff's office. Inside was empty. Briggs was not seen, but on the desk was a cup of coffee still steaming. On the wall, the map of Red Hollow was pinned with many red marks. One mark was at the Dusty Star, one mark was at Boot Hill, one mark was at the church, and the largest mark was at the Mercy Ridge mine. Ethan approached the desk. The drawer was locked. He used the key from Daniel's box. It fit perfectly. Inside the drawer was a file folder, the name on the front page, Ethan Cole. Clara looked at him. They monitored you since before you returned to town. Ethan flipped the page. Inside the file were dates, locations, old testimonies about Ash Creek, the names of the dead people, and a line written in red ink. Do not kill him yet. Vale wants him alive. Tommy read slowly. Do not kill him. Vale wants him alive. Ethan remained silent. Clara looked at him. Why? Ethan did not have time to answer. From the jail cells in the back, a noise rang out. Ethan raised his gun. Come out. No one come out. The noise rang out again. Clara held the oil lamp, shining it into the jail cell area. In the last jail cell, a man sat leaning against the wall. His face was bruised, his shirt torn, his hands shackled to the iron doors. Miles exclaimed, Deputy Sheriff Henry Shaw. The man lifted his head with difficulty. Do not trust Briggs. Ethan approached. We know. Henry Shaw breathed heavily. No, you do not know everything yet. Clara unlocked the cell door, using the keys hanging on the wall. Henry almost collapsed down. Ethan caught him. Henry gripped Ethan's sleeve tightly. Briggs is not just bought, Ethan asked. Then what is it? Henry looked straight at him. He is preparing to hand over the entire town to Vale before the federal army arrives to investigate. Clara was stunned. The army? Henry nodded. Daniel Price managed to send a letter out. An inspection unit is coming to Red Hollow in 3 days. Miles whispered, So we only need to survive through 3 days? Henry shook his head, eyes full of fear. No. Vale already knows. He will wipe clean the evidence before they arrive. Ethan asked, The evidence at Mercy Ridge? Henry swallowed hard. Not just evidence. He looked at each person. At Mercy Ridge there are guns, explosives, counterfeit money, a list of bribed officials, and missing people. Tommy backed away. Missing people. Henry looked at the boy. The people who refused to sell their land, the miners who knew the truth, the mailmen before Daniel. Clara covered her mouth. Miles closed his eyes. Ethan asked, What does Vale plan to do? Henry answered in a voice almost like a whisper, Blow up the mine. The air in the jail room felt like it froze over. Henry continued, If the mine explodes, all evidence vanishes. Everyone inside also vanishes, and Vale will say it was an accident in an old abandoned mine. Clara looked at the map in Ethan's hand. When? Henry opened his mouth, aiming to answer, but from outside the office rang the sound of slow clapping. Ethan whipped around. Sheriff Walter Briggs stood at the door, hat worn neatly, badge shining on his chest, gun already drawn in his hand. Behind him were Caleb Rusk and 3 black Viper gunmen. Briggs sighed. Henry, I told you not to talk too much. Caleb smirked. Cole, you really are a good hunting dog. We burned the saloon, searched every street, yet you shoved yourself right into the place we wanted. Ethan stood blocking in front of Tommy and Clara. Briggs looked at him. Put the gun down, Ethan. Ethan replied, You put your badge down first. Briggs hesitated slightly. Caleb burst into laughter. Very good, but not good enough to live. Briggs said, You do not understand, Ethan. This town died a long time ago. Vale is just the man smart enough to buy its corpse. Clara stepped forward. You once swore to protect Red Hollow. Briggs looked at her. And I have protected it in the only way left. If one opposes Vale, the whole town gets crushed. If one cooperates, at least some people stay alive. Ethan said in a cold voice, That is the word of every traitor when wanting to sleep soundly. Briggs raised his gun. I do not need your forgiveness. I only need you to step into the jail cell. Ethan asked, What does Vale want me alive for? Briggs did not reply. Caleb tilted his head, smiling wickedly. Have you not guessed it yet? Ash Creek did not end 7 years ago, Cole. It was only waiting for the right person to return to start over. Ethan tightened his grip on his gun. In his eyes, an old phantom just stood up. Ash Creek. 14 corpses, one fiery red afternoon, and a truth that people had buried too deep. Caleb said, "Put the gun down, or the kid dies first." Tommy held his breath. Briggs was startled. "Caleb, no kids involved." Caleb looked at the sheriff with a contemptuous gaze. "Do you still think you give orders here?" In that moment, Ethan saw the crack between them. Briggs might betray the town, but he was still afraid of some things. Caleb was not. Ethan slowly lowered his gun down. Clara looked at him, panicked. "Ethan." He placed the Colt onto the desk. Caleb laughed. "Smart indeed." Ethan raised his 2 hands. Briggs approached to take the gun, but he had made a mistake. He looked at the gun on the desk, did not look at Ethan's left hand. Ethan knocked the oil lamp off the desk with his elbow. The entire room flared blindingly bright. Tommy instantly ducked beneath the desk. Clara pulled Henry down to one side. Ethan snatched the Colt from the desk before Briggs could even react. Caleb fired first, but the firelight made him blink. The bullet embedded into the wall. Ethan shot the hanging lamp on the ceiling. In the darkness, everything became chaotic. Clara fired 2 shots toward the door. Miles, who knows since when, had grabbed a wooden chair, smashed it straight into a black Viper guy rushing in. Henry Shaw, despite being injured, still grabbed the leg of another guy, pulling him down. Ethan vaulted across the desk, punching Briggs, knocking him into the filing cabinet. Caleb backed out the door, shooting and cursing simultaneously. "Kill them! Kill them all!" A spark of fire from the desk caught onto the curtains. The fire spread quickly. Ethan kicked the gun out of Briggs's hand. Briggs fell down, blood trickling at the corner of his mouth, but still tried to reach for his badge. Ethan pointed his gun at him. "When does Mercy Ridge blow up?" Briggs gasped for breath. Caleb shouted from outside, "Do not speak!" Ethan cocked his gun. Briggs looked at him. For a single second, the sheriff of Red Hollow no longer looked like a traitor. He looked like a man who had dug a hole too deep and only now realized he was lying in it. "Dawn." Clara was stunned. "Dawn today?" Briggs nodded. "They already set the explosives. If you want to save anyone, you only have a few hours left." Ethan asked, "Who holds the detonator?" Briggs looked out the door, where Caleb had just vanished into the night's darkness. Caleb Rusk. Ethan did not wait any longer. He turned to Clara. "Get Henry and Tommy out of here," Clara asked. "What about you?" Ethan picked up the Mercy Ridge map. "I am going to get the detonator," Miles cried out. "Alone?" Ethan looked at the fire steadily growing inside the sheriff's office. "No." He stepped out the door. "This time, I am going hunting." Outside, Red Hollow was submerged in smoke and firelight. Caleb Rusk was galloping north on horseback toward Mercy Ridge. Behind his back, the 3 surviving gunmen rode after him. Ethan stepped down the stairs of the sheriff's office. Clara dragged Henry outside, Tommy walking closely beside her. "Ethan!" He turned back. Clara tossed him a rifle taken from the hands of a downed guy. Ethan caught it. She said, "You told me to get them out. It does not mean I have to listen to everything." Ethan looked at her. In a single night, Clara Hayes went from being a saloon singer to becoming the most dangerous ally he had. He nodded. "Then do not miss." Clara replied, "I already told you. I do not have that habit." Tommy ran over, handing Ethan the silver snake pin. "This fell off one guy's coat." Ethan took it. Tommy said softly, "Will you come back?" Ethan looked toward the north, where Caleb's silhouette vanished into the night curtain. "Before dawn. Do you promise?" Ethan did not like promising. Promises in the West usually died faster than the people speaking them, but this time he looked at the boy and nodded. "I promise." Clara mounted the horse next to him. Miles shouted from behind, "Are you going to?" Clara looked at him. "You keep everyone alive until we return." Miles opened his mouth intending to protest, then just sighed. "I hate this town." Tommy said, "I thought you loved it." Miles looked at the fire, then looked at the civilians, shivering behind the church. "I hate it because I love it." Ethan spurred his horse. Clara followed behind. The two horseback silhouettes dashed out of Red Hollow, heading toward the Mercy Ridge mine, where Dawn was waiting along with explosives, secrets, and the people buried alive in the darkness. Far away, on the path up the mountain, Caleb Rusk turned his head to look back. He saw Ethan Cole chasing after him. Instead of being afraid, he smiled, because inside his pocket was not just the detonator. He also had a letter from Cornelius Vale. On it, only one sentence was written: "Bring Ethan Cole to Mercy Ridge alive. If he refuses, bury him with the others. Bring Ethan Cole to Mercy Ridge alive. If he refuses, bury him with the rest." And just like that, before dawn touched Red Hollow, the hunt had reversed its course. The Black Viper was no longer just hunting Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole also began hunting them back. If tonight's episode made you hold your breath with every gunshot, please subscribe to the Tales from the Wild West channel. Tomorrow, we will dive deeper into the darkness of Red Hollow, where the sheriff's badge no longer represents justice, where an abandoned silver mine might be imprisoning living souls, and where Ethan Cole will have to face the most terrifying question. Has the person truly behind Ash Creek been waiting for him for 7 whole years? Leave a comment to let us know. Who do you think Clara Hayes really is? Just a saloon singer who knows how to shoot? Or is she hiding a past even more dangerous than Ethan Cole's? Do not forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because in this Wild West, when the saloon floor has been stained with blood, then the next dawn might not be meant for the living.